you as you are. Don't try to be anyone else. You can learn skill sets, but don't try to be anyone else. It is so important to be a powerful in-person presenter in business. And in fact, I believe over the next few years, it's going to be even more important because it will be a great separator and differentiator in business. Because if you can get on stage or get in front of a room, whether that be 3 people or 300 people, and be able to deliver and transfer the vision of your product or service in business, it is going to be a game changer for you. So let me share with you some of the things that I've been doing to increase, and even some of the failures that I've made to be better and more powerful in your presenting, especially in person. My name is Chaz Wilson, president and founder of Master Networks and Wilson Leadership Coaching. I've shared many times sort of growing up as an introvert, shy. My mom had to walk me to school for years because I was just too shy, and they put me in sports to try to, get me to connect with other people, and it was just painful. I would stand on a soccer field and I'd stand in the same spot and kids would roam around me with the ball because I was just so shy. So to think as an adult to own a business and be on stages and to speak in front of people, hundreds of people and thousands of people, has been quite the journey. And it's so important to understand the process of this, whether you've ever done it before or you've done it many times, and how to improve. And I have goals of getting on bigger stages. So let me share with you a couple of things. A few years back, I went to a in-person, private, by invitation only training for speakers. And there was 9 of us in the room, and prior to the event, we were given one sheet of paper that honestly had like a paragraph and maybe 5 bullet points. And we then had 30 minutes. We had to teach on that paragraph and those bullet points, teach the other 8 people in the room, plus 2 private instructors. It was incredibly stressful because these are all other professional or soon to be wannabe professional speakers who are rating every aspect of what you're doing. And so for me, the material I knew really well. Got it a couple days in advance. I knew the material really well, something I was strong in. So I had no problem with the material. And again, if you're speaking, it's on your business, you're going to know that stuff. So that wasn't the issue. I benefited somewhat because I was like number 6 of 8 to go. And so I watched other people get up. I watched people shake. I watched people get nervous. I watched a lady unfortunately break down and started crying and just stop. In fact, everyone in the room was trying to hey, you can do this. You can keep going. Look, speaking in front of people is a nerve-wracking thing. It's one of the most stressful things for people. So I get up and I go to deliver my training. I get great feedback. And then in the back, the presenter who's in charge, he said, Chaz, there's no question you know the material. There's no question you know how to deliver it. There's no question you can really be a great speaker over time. He said, but I have one piece of feedback for you that I think is going to sound really simple, but it's incredibly important. I said, all right, what's that? He said, you ever tried smiling? And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so focused on delivering the material, and I was so intense in my delivery and so passionate about what I was doing, like I almost looked angry and upset. And I went back and watched it on film, and it was accurate. I wasn't smiling. And so fast forward today, I sometimes tell my team, hey, make sure, stand in the back and smile at me. Make sure I'm smiling when I'm delivering the information that I'm working on delivering. There's lots of different things you can learn over time, and I've learned them. So I'm going to share a couple of those with you. Number 1, when you go watch other speakers, I'm always watching for 2 things. I'm listening to the content that they're sharing, of course, but I'm also simultaneously having 2 sets of eyes watching. I'm watching and listening to what they're saying, and I'm also watching what and how they're doing it. There was this great speaker that I used to watch, and the way he moved around the stage, I started watching that. I started thinking okay, if he's telling a story, and it doesn't have to be a stage. If you don't have aspirations to be on stage, that's fine. Your stage could be 3 people in front of a room or at a conference table. Some of these same skills apply. But he didn't just, the way he moved and the way he shared story, he didn't just tell a story, he relived a story. And by reliving the story, you were with him in it. So for example, when he told a story, he was talking about a little child that he was talking to. He knelt down on the stage, even though there was no one there. He knelt down as if he was talking to that child. And all of a sudden you go, I can envision it, and I'm right there with him. And so your ability to relive and tell stories is going to be so powerful to your ability to transfer your message of their product or service, right? Imagine if you have this new product and you're trying to share how it works. If you ever want to watch really good experts of this, flip on a QVC or those shows that they're selling a product in 10 minutes. They have to transfer a whole vision of how it will benefit your life. So don't just click past those. Look for the skill sets that people are doing. So I watch these speakers. Now here's a problem and a downfall from that. So I watch the speaker. I love how he tells and relives stories, but then I tried to mimic that. Now, there's not necessarily a bad thing in trying to take a skill set and try to adopt it, but you have to make it your own, right? You have to make it yours. So I started to mimic the way that this person would do things on stage. And I'll share with you in just a minute why that became a problem. So learn from great speakers. Watch the way they tell stories. Watch the way they move from a stage. So for example, if you're going to tell something and you're going to talk to somebody who's over here on the right-hand side, my first inclination was to walk to that side. That's one thing thing you can do. There's also a powerful benefit to walk to the other side and now look across and have that conversation, because now the whole side of the room is engaged. There are just little things like this that are super important as you learn the skill and the craft of how you present yourself. By the way, if you find this helpful, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Share this with anyone you know who wants to be or soon to be or want to be presenter in person and wants to up their skill set. The other thing that I'm going to share with you that's just mightily important, it seems like such a small thing. If you say you're going to be done at a certain time, if you have 10 minutes to speak, you better be 10 minutes. If you have an hour to speak, don't go longer than an hour. As soon as the time is up, people inherently know your time is up. They stop listening. It does not matter how powerful your content is, they're done. They check out. The best thing you can do, and I'll remember one of the best speakers I ever heard from, and I had so much admiration for the speaker. It was actually the second speaker. The first speaker got up and he gave this one of the best 15-minute speeches I've ever seen and ever heard. It was the second speaker, though, that spoke the most to me, because he got up and he said, he just tied his message in and he said, look, we have just heard one of the best messages. It was such an admiration for the previous speaker. And he came off so classy. He knew before he got up that he had just heard, we'd all heard one of the best, most inspirational speeches we'd ever heard. He knew that he had the ability to either detract from it by what he was doing or add to it. And you walk a fine line. He knew he could maybe not add too much. So here's what he did. He got up and he said, look, we've just heard one of the best speeches. He said, as a speaker, I wasn't for the last 15 minutes a speaker. I was an attendee just like you. And what I just heard touched my life. And to be honest, I would just add one thing to it. And he maybe took 2 minutes and added a brief little thing to it. And then he kind of closed up what he did and he sat down. And he had 25 minutes or so. But what he did as a speaker was validated the message of the previous speaker. And he came off looking so good and so classy, just as well as the previous speaker. But if he had tried to compete, is what I'm getting at. If he had tried to compete with that previous speaker and been like, oh my gosh, that was so good, but let me tell you why mine's better, or let me tell you why my thing's gonna top that, he knew that was a battle he would lose. And I sat there and I went, man, that is one of the most professional, classiest speakers I've ever seen. So you have to know the skill set and the audience of the people around you. Let me share one other thing here. Your words matter. And I mentioned to you about mimicking, right? The things you say are so important. So I got up on stage one time and I said, hey, I'm so excited to speak to you today or speak at you today. And later, one of the other speakers who was had much more history at speaking, much more experience, he came up to me after. He said, hey, Chaz, can I give you some feedback? Of course, I want feedback. I want to grow. I want to improve. Feedback's a breakfast of champions. He said, why don't you share something like, I'm so excited to be with you today. No one wants to be talked at or spoken to. So the moment you get on stage and you say, I'm so excited to speak to you today, is different than when you say, I'm so excited to be here with you today. Small little word changes mattered. And so I started to dissect everything that I did on stage and looked at all the words and closes and phrases, the opening to the close to the middle. What was I saying? How was I saying it, to tie the audience in with me? Because what happened is when I was trying to mimic other people, I became like them and it wasn't genuine. And one time I got on stage and I spoke and I wasn't myself. I wasn't probably smiling. I was trying to move around the stage. It looked awkward because I was trying to mimic the other person. I probably even copied some of the phrases that they used. And I just knew when I got off stage, I didn't impact the audience. I just didn't impact the audience. And as I got off stage, one of the people that I knew that was there as an attendee, I knew her. And I went up to her afterwards. I said, hey, I even went up to my room and kind of hung out there for a couple of hours. I didn't want to be with anyone because I knew I missed the mark. And these are some of the greatest learning experiences when you do. Whether that's one-on-one with a customer and you go to sell something and it doesn't land, ask for feedback. Even if they say no, say, tell me why. I just want to learn. I want to get better. So I get off the elevator. I'm walking down the hallway and I see this young lady and I said, hey, thanks for being here. And she's like, oh, wow, you did great. I could just tell it was a nice compliment, but I knew it wasn't genuine. I said, hey, listen, I feel like I really struggled. I would love to know what your thoughts are and what your feedback is. And she said, can I be honest with you? I'm like, yes, please. She said, she mentioned one of the other speakers who happened to be there as well. And she said, I feel like you're trying to be like so-and-so. I mean, she nailed it, absolutely nailed it. And I felt horrible in the moment because I was like, I bet everyone else felt that way too. She said, listen, he is a very dynamic speaker, but when you are you on stage, you're very magnetic. And that has stuck with me for so long. When I am me, people are attracted to and magnetic. And when you're you, they'll be attracted to you. You as you are. Don't try to be anyone else. You can learn skill sets, but don't try to be anyone else. From that moment on stage, I decided I would always be me, and I would do it the way I felt was right. So how I prepare right now is I maybe draw out a few bullet points, and I get up on stage and I teach, and I do it the way I would do it. And I try to listen, and I try to look at the audience and see what they need. A couple years ago, I was in Atlanta, about 400 people in the audience. And this was after the experience I just shared with you. And I'm on stage, and there's an activity that I typically do, and it's a little bit of an emotional activity. And I just felt inspired at that moment based on how I felt with the audience to shift gears on stage, even though it wasn't planned and prepared, to shift gears and to do that exercise. And that exercise is I asked them to pull out their phones, and I asked them to text someone that they care about who's not in that room. And I asked them to share a specific message exactly as I tell them to. And they do. And I noticed about a minute later, 2 minutes later, something like that, as I continued on, there was a gentleman right in front, about the third row back, right in the aisle seat. And he was probably in his mid to late 60s, and he was very tearful. And I was asking for audience participation, and he agreed to share that he had a daughter he had not spoken with in like 12 years, and he sent her the text. And he had grandchildren he'd never met because he had this estranged relationship with his daughter. And he sent her the text, and her response was that she loved him and that they needed to talk. And it opened the door for the healing of that relationship. And I wondered after I left that stage, had I not followed that thought, had I not been me, had I not done it the way I wanted to do it and took a chance, I may never have been able to make that connection. So it's so important to be yourself, whether that's again on stage in front of one customer or 3 customers. Your ability to transfer and deliver as a presenter is the key part of the sales cycle that I believe is differentiating people today. I have, as a customer, been on the other end of this so many times where people just cannot adequately transfer the vision of what their product or service does. If you can master this skill set and become a powerful in-person presenter, I assure you it will separate you and differentiate you in your marketplace with your product or service in your business. If this video was helpful for you, again, go ahead and like and subscribe, and understand that what we do is share with you things. Me and my team, we come to you, we share things with you that are things I wished I'd learned when I started my business, things that have helped me along the way. And so if you want more of these videos, like and subscribe. Go ahead and check out our channel for other videos about how to start your business, how to grow your business, and we'll check it out on the next video.